Welcome to the Academic Writer's Toolbox. This is the third part of the three-part series on ways to get you started, then sustain and improve your academic writing. For those of you who were not here last time, my name is Dr. Margarita or Maggie Huerta, and I'm one of the ACU Online Writing Center tutors. So with that said, let's get started on talking about how to improve your writing, slowing down to go fast. So I wanted to begin with this quote to just give you some time to think. It says, "Give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, and I will spend the first four sharpening the axe." And it's a quote apparently by Abraham Lincoln. So again, give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, and I will spend the first 4 sharpening the axe. So I know we probably don't go and chop down trees, but I just want you to think a little bit about that. So in other words, when you have I would imagine that chopping down a tree, I've never personally done it, could be a big task, at least it would be for me. So if I have, it must be a big tree. So if I have 6 hours to chop down this giant tree, I need to perhaps slow down a little, make sure my tool is very sharp and ready to go so that in the end I can be more efficient. So I don't know if that makes sense, but it's this idea of like, instead of just starting to chop it all down, I need to maybe slow down a little, take 4 hours making sure my axe is sharp, and then I can get it done much more quickly and efficiently. So that's kind of the idea I want you to embrace. And, we're all given the same amount of time in a day. We can't create more time, but we can decide on how we prioritize what we do with our time, including our writing projects. So knowing this whole session revolves around the idea of slowing down to go fast, which is something that we can do with the time we're given to actually be more productive. So it might not feel like, for example, I'm being very productive by spending 4 hours sharpening my axe, but in the end, it will be more productive because I will get things done more efficiently. And perhaps if I didn't spend that time doing the axe sharpening, it might take me longer than 6 hours to chop down the tree. So before we delve in to the topic, let's quickly review some key concepts from the last 2 webinars. If you missed those, there's no problem. You can always go back and watch them at the end of this PowerPoint presentation. I will provide you a link where you can access the previous webinars and other webinars we have. So the first one was about how to stop stressing and start writing, and ways to reduce writing anxiety. And the second one was how to build your writing productivity by increasing writing self-efficacy. So in session 1, we had 3 foundational points, which were to embrace your writing identity, to establish a writing routine, to engage in the writing process. And then in session 2, we talked about ways to set priorities and stick to them. And then some tools such as using a timer when you write and logging your writing, and if you can, sharing that with others. And I explain in depth, what all these things mean and why they are important. So let's go ahead and start with the first tool I want to share, or concept/tool I want to share with you, which is the idea of writing as you read. And the way I do this is I use a writing matrix. Okay, it's also known as, people call it the literature review matrix. I can just call it a writing matrix, whatever you want to call it. And the idea comes from Judith Garrard's book, Health Sciences Literature Reviews Made Easy, the Matrix Method. Now, Dr. Garrard has a background in educational psychology, but has worked in her career in health sciences. And she wrote this book because she wanted to find ways to help her graduate students synthesize information in literature reviews versus just summarizing information. So when information is synthesized, ideas are grouped together versus presented as a series of seemingly disconnected summary paragraphs. So synthesis is something, we should do, and we likely do it in our heads when we're reading as academics, but I have found that it's hard to do and to organize, especially literature reviews, which is unfortunately why so many academics, they'll assign, like professors might assign students to do the lit reviews, but I really feel like that's a terrible idea, because literature reviews are a way of learning about a topic. I learned how to think more deeply about my project by reading recent work in my field. It also, doing this helps me think through my data analysis, my results, my discussion, how I'm going to present my information by reading what others have done or not done, right? And so, but I get it. I mean, writing a literature review for most people is very time consuming, long, difficult. And I think we just live in an era of so much information, right? So it can feel daunting. So with all that said, I want to present this tool. So the idea is it's rather simple. It's just a way of organizing all the literature you read into a matrix. Okay, so I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. So the idea is to set up a matrix to help you organize information you read and then write as you read. And that's the key. So you may ask, well, I've set up my writing appointments with myself. I'm writing regularly every day or every week, but I don't, when I sit down, I do need to read, but how is that writing? Well, here we go. You can use a writing matrix to read and write at the same time. And actually, it might feel like you're kind of going slow and sharpening that axe before chopping down the tree, but I promise you it will make you go so much more quickly later. So here's an example of a matrix that I made for a particular writing project. Now I use Word. I know a lot of people that use Excel to make their matrix. So it can be, and the matrix can change depending on the topic you're doing or project you're doing. Although I will say, if you look at the top, I always do have the year, the author, the title of what I'm reading, the journal it came from separately. And that's because on Word, you can actually do this. You can definitely do this on Excel. You can actually sort things by, author or year, or even the journal. And that's very useful for me when I'm trying to see patterns, or like in this case, I mean, I had things chronologically, and I like to see how research changes over time, which authors are writing which journals are they publishing in. So it's a nice feature to have things separately so you can sort and see patterns. And then that helps you synthesize. Okay. So in this case, this was in education. So it was important for me to know the grade that the intervention was being done in, the context, the sample. I was apparently looking at, science curriculum, how long their intervention was, what was their methodology, because that would inform perhaps the kind of methodology I want to use based on my research question. What analysis did they do? That could help me also think about my own analysis. And then what kind of writing intervention that they actually use. This column actually emerged as I was reading. So you can add columns as you go. This is a flexible tool for your own learning and your own recording of your reading as you write. And then of course the findings that are important for me in my own words. And so you can see how you can be reading an article and filling out the matrix as you read it. Now, some people say, oh, that's just going to take me a long time. But again, it's that idea of slowing down to go fast later. And the beauty is that if you do this, it focuses your reading you capture what you're thinking. So I often have a column, you can't see it here, where it just says my thoughts, things to look up later. I know a lot of people tell me, oh, I go on rabbit holes. I start reading an article and now I want to look something else up and I just can't stay focused. Well, put a column that allows you to capture like, ooh, I really want to look this up later. And you write it down and your brain refocuses on your reading and filling out the important information you need for this particular project or your dissertation or whatever it is. So I have found this, like I said, incredibly helpful. Is it fun to fill out? No. Is it fast? Not necessarily. And I like to go fast, but it is hard for me. And this is one of those tools I resisted at first, but I did it for my dissertation. I still do it. And I do it because it actually saves me so much more time later. I do go faster later. In fact, I can say I'm able to go much, much faster and deeper on topics because I've taken the time to slow down, to write, to think as I'm reading, to learn, record information, and I can always refer back to it later. I even still use my matrix for my dissertation and add on the new research that comes in. This is beautiful document where I have everything instead of things printed out all over the place and I don't know where things are. So and it really gives you ownership of the literature. And I will tell you that my dissertation committee, even reviewers of journals, have commented that my literature reviews are well written. And so it's not easy for me, but this tool has certainly helped me synthesize things and learn things and give me ideas for new research ideas. So I hope this makes sense and you're encouraged to try it out. So the second concept is to give and receive useful feedback. And you all are so blessed because ACU has a whole writing center to help you with this. But I want to talk about it more broadly. It's just, and I put in a blog post I wrote, a link to a blog post I wrote about it, where it explains how to do this in more depth, but I will talk about it. And that is the idea of getting feedback regularly, okay? And understanding that our writing is never perfect, okay? But I think it's really important to understand what useful feedback is and is not. So here's a comic from phdcomics.com, and I cannot remember this little character's name, but he is another main character. He's a grad student, and you can see he's sitting in front of his professor, and his professor says to him, "I wrote my comments on the paper draft you sent me." And the professor keeps saying, "Before I give it to you, I want you to know it's not necessarily a reflection of what I think of you or your ability to do quality work." And the grad student says, "Okay." And the professor says, "Here." And then there's this image of him looking at the grad student looking at his paper, and there's just red marks all over the place. And he's just kind of freaking out. And so, and the last little slide there, the paper is literally bleeding red ink as he's twisting it. And the professor says, "I mean, it's sufficient, but it's not necessary." And this is not useful feedback. And I don't know about you. I know I received lots of feedback like this throughout my undergrad and graduate studies, where I just got a letter grade at the top at the end of the term with all kinds of red marks everywhere and really no room for me to improve or understand what I did right or what I did wrong, just a lot of corrections. I think that's changed in academia. It's certainly, at least from what I've seen, like I said, our online writing center here at ACU does not do this. That's not our goal, is to go in and correct everything and just kind of freak you out. So that's the good news, but I just want you to know that this is not useful feedback, right? So, but what useful feedback is feedback that's appropriate for the writing stage. So again, in the writing center here, you can submit writing at any stage, whether it's the beginning draft, the middle, or the end, and we will work with you knowing, you're at different stages. Useful feedback is also seeing patterns in our writing, right? So, and allowing us to fix them and learn from them ourselves, right? And the whole idea is to make our writing stronger before sending it off, perhaps when I say review, like to your professor or, to be published or whatever. Okay, so that's what useful feedback is. And so when asking for feedback, and you can do it with us, these are just some ideas from Patricia Goodson's book, Becoming an Academic Writer. She talks about reader and criterion-based feedback. So asking your feedback giver, like, is this even an interesting topic? Is my argument strong? How's the tone of my writing? Can you give me feedback on my organization, on my clarity, on my grammar, on my word usage? These are just some of the many ideas. That's more like reader-based feedback. If you ever work with me, I give lots of reader-based feedback. I love getting feedback from people outside of my field. A lot of times I'm not in your fields, but I can ask, like, well, what does this mean? And that forces me in my writing, when someone outside my field is reading, to be really, really clear with my writing and my explanations. Then there's expert-based feedback. So this might be your professor that's in your field, your dissertation chair, about the content. Am I covering broadly enough or narrowly enough, or whatever I need? What's the scope of what I'm talking about? The accuracy of what I'm saying, again, my argument in the field. And this one's big. Am I contributing to the literature and to previous research that is out there on my topic? So these are things that experts in your field can guide you with, okay? So I hope that was helpful as a start. I did want to say, definitely check out that blog post that talks more about feedback right here at therealacademics.blogpost.com, giving and receiving useful feedback. Because the last thing I want to say is I find it really helpful to set up, again, with the Online Writing Center, you get to set up an everything from 30 minutes to an hour type appointment to get feedback, which is awesome. But if you're doing this on your own, it's very helpful to set up writing appointments with people and say, can you meet with me for 30 minutes or or an hour? And then ask specifically, can you read this for organization and give me some tips on how I can organize my writing moving forward? And perhaps, I wouldn't give a whole dissertation to the feedback giver. They might get overwhelmed, or if you do, say, can you please look at just these, couple pages or this section and give me some feedback so then I can apply it to the rest of my writing. So those are just some tips. And even if you are ever teaching a class, you can tell students to do this as well, to submit, a chunk of their writing, and then you can provide feedback on patterns, and you'll see that, and then tell them to apply it to the rest of their paper. I do this all the time. So I find that then they're able to take that feedback and make the writing so much stronger. And it's the same for me. When I get really good feedback from someone else, I'm able to go back and make the rest of my writing really strong. So let's move on to the idea of engaging in editing rounds. So this would be towards the end of your writing process for a piece that you're doing. I think feedback is like the lit review. Obviously, we start with the lit review, but we continue adding to it, and we might go back and forth on that. With feedback, I recommend getting feedback at all stages of your writing, beginning, middle, and end. And then editing rounds, I would say, are more towards like the end, once you're getting, you have a pretty final draft of your writing. And so what this is, and again, in the Writing Center, we're not an editing service, but there are people that will edit professionally, and we have, I'm pretty sure on our blog website, we have references for that. I know I myself have used a professional editor once, and that was really helpful for a really difficult paper I had to write, and it was very long, and it was just totally worth it. I know I've seen grad students pay for professional editing. So it doesn't mean they're doing writing or dissertation or anything. It's just that final, all the APA and all that stuff. So people do that. But you can also engage in your own editing rounds. And I do this all the time. Like I said, this is towards the end of your writing project. And it's to put the final touches on your paper. So it's, as I would say, a work of art, right? Or at least a finished product that you're proud of. So, before I show you what editing rounds are, I just want to say they're helpful for three things. They make my writing clearer, crisper, easier to read. They help me significantly cut back on word count. It didn't used to be a problem for me until I started writing more prolifically, but oftentimes I would find I had too much written and I needed to cut back to fit page limits, perhaps for an assignment, or if you start publishing, there's page limits often as well, or proposals or things like that. And third, editing rounds helped me polish my writing so that so I don't end up like this little character. So again, phdcomics.com, and the professor says, I made a few tweaks to the draft paper you sent me. Oh, it's Professor Smith. And the student says, you rewrote the entire thing. And the professor says, yes, it's easier for me to rewrite it than to point out all the things you did wrong. I call it learning by demonstration. And the student says, what are we demonstrating? And the professor says that you're a bad writer. And that's awful. I know this is my dark humor here, but this is what you don't want, right? Like I am a big believer in that we should, and this is what we do at the Writing Center, we should guide you and show you patterns in your writing and show you how to fix them so that you yourself can fix them. And I myself love that as a writer. I always am learning new things from other people when I get useful feedback. So, all right, let's see. So here's this information I've adapted from, and again, I'm going to refer to this book quite a bit. I highly recommend it be on your shelf. Patricia Goodson's Becoming an Academic Writer. And so one of the exercises in this book is about when you have a nearly done final-ish draft, is to go through your document in Word and in successive rounds and search. You can use a search tool on Word to search for words and search for these particular words. And she has a list of that, which, this, that, these, those. The verb to be in all its forms is, was, will be. Words ending in shun, T-I-O-N, and ment, M-E-N-T. And as well as to, and as well as, these are phrases, to, or. She puts useless words, just kind of words that are just filling things in, you don't really need them. And checking for subject verb agreement. And so the idea is to go into Word and search for the word, and then everywhere it comes out on your document, look at it. Usually where these words are, at least for me anyway, my sentences tend to be not clear, especially that. People overuse that. I do too. I've really become a stickler on not using that, or this or that, or because they're just vague words, and they make the writing clunky and not clear. And so if you go through your whole paper looking for these words, you can fix and edit the sentences and revise them so that they're clearer. So it's a really great exercise. And the idea is to go through, like literally go through your entire document, look for the word of, and everywhere the word of is, read your sentence and see if there's some way you can make it clearer, crisper. And it might be the sentence is clear and crisp and you move on. And then you go through that and which, and you look for those words and then so on. So you'd be amazed at how much that helps with editing. So the writing dares for this session are to use a writing matrix. Try that out. Learn how to give and receive useful feedback. And I know you can get useful feedback from us, but it never hurts to also start engaging and providing feedback to your classmates as well. You know, if you ever form little writing groups or you can do that with each other. And I'll tell you, giving feedback is also super beneficial for your own writing and thinking through that. And engage in editing rounds, you know, find ways to edit your work yourself and start practicing that sort of final crafting. And the last thing is just want to encourage you to keep on writing and not give up. I did want to show you how to do the editing round. I'm going to read Brave here and stop sharing. Whoops. Sorry, there's my little picture. Just because I want you to see what this looks like on, and I need to find I'll just open a Word document. So let's see. This is not an academic piece at all. It's just the first thing I could pull up. I was actually working on a little marketing piece, but regardless of the content, this is how I do editing rounds. So you go up here to search. You can actually put list in sidebar right here. And if I, for example, look for the word of, you'll see all the places where of comes out, where I used of. And so I can then read my sentence. It says so much of how we perceive an establishment. So I could think about how I could possibly maybe make the sentence more direct or clearer, right? So it could just be how we perceive an establishment. Maybe I don't need so much of. I don't need that phrase necessarily, so I can delete it. And so I could go through all the ofs here, and then, or I could put that. Okay, given the many odors that could linger around classrooms, I could instead say, let's see, I could say, given the many odors lingering around classrooms, if I really needed to cut words and I didn't want to use that. So I really thought it was important to show you what I meant by editing rounds and the little search tool right here. So thanks for letting me indulge in that. And let me get back to where we were here, because I wanted to close by, I think I already shared the dares to keep on writing. And again, I have a compilation here of books I've been talking about in the previous sessions and this one as well. I want to reiterate Paul Silva's How to Write a Lot is a short, sweet, really helpful book to get you motivated to start a writing routine. Becoming an Academic Writer, must have, I would say, for all academic writers, by Patricia Goodson. She actually, like I said, a lot of the ideas I'm presenting here come from her books. She has exercises for helping you write different parts of your research pieces, including your dissertation. So super helpful, super practical. Helen Sword, just her Air and Light and Time and Space, talks about ways that successful academic writers write. She compiles a qualitative study she did interviewing and surveying productive writers all over the world. So it's just an interesting read if you're interested in that. Cal Newport just kind of inspires me, at least, to really focus. Like, how do I focus in a very distracted world? And we do live in a very distracted world. And how do I do that well as an academic? Robert Boyce and his professors as writers. Like I said, this was a really helpful book for me, even as a graduate student. And just all his psychological research on ways people could reduce writing anxiety and increase their self-efficacy, such as logging and things like that. And then Health Sciences Literature Reviews Made Easy, which I mentioned in this session, or The Matrix Method by Judith Garrard. And I highly recommend you try out the Matrix Method, especially as you're writing and literature reviews / synthesizing. You can even try it for smaller assignments and see how it works for you. All right, I've shared blogs and websites before. In the last session, I think I've added a couple more here. So I've mentioned the Academic Ladder. I've mentioned TAA, which is an organization to help academic writers of all kinds, whether you're a grad student, a faculty writing journal articles, or if you're a textbook writer or you write books, whatever it is, it's all about academic writers writing, and they have all kinds of support. Get a Life PhD is another nice blog. Publication Coach is a lot about writing productivity. I have a blog called The Real Academics, which you can actually sign up for on the website, but you can find that on the blog. And then I'm adding in Helen Sword. She has a website as well with all kinds of cool webinars and live events. Some of them cost, some of them don't. But if you read her book and become a fan of hers, she has a lovely website now. So I'm pointing all this out just for you to explore and know that you are not alone in your academic writing, that there's a lot of people talking about academic writing, and I find blogs helpful in my own writing time just to inspire me, and I might read one as a warm-up before I start writing. And like I said, we are here for you at the Writing Center, which is an awesome service. And so I'm going to get to that in a second, but as you schedule your writing sessions, I hope you are scheduling time to regularly write. Some ideas are to reflect on what you learned and what your next steps will be. So I would encourage you to set a timer for 5 minutes and just write down whatever comes to mind at the end of this webinar. Also, you can read resources provided in the slides. I mentioned a bunch of blog posts and books you can order. You can read a writing blog, purchase a writing book. Again, I highly recommend starting with Paul Silva's book and checking out Pat Goodson's book for sure as a really handy resource. Schedule a feedback session with us or with a friend. Do an editing round of your writing like I showed you. Try that out, see how it works for you. I personally, again, that's towards the end of your writing. So like I said, you can schedule a feedback session with us. We have, you can check out the Online Writing Center quick link in my ACU to learn more about all the resources we have for you, including a video that shows you exactly how to make an appointment and submit a paper. We work with you at any stage of your writing. So that's the really cool part, whether you're at the beginning, middle, or end, we are here to work with you and provide useful feedback. You can make 2 types of appointments. You can make asynchronous appointments and upload your paper, and we send you feedback through email within 24 hours. You'll get something called Writing Center Report. We also do real-time phone Zoom appointments. So you can go to the schedule and click on the Zoom link at your appointed time, which is Central Time. And you can access many writing-related resources on the Online Writing Center website. So to make an appointment with us, the submission process is to first schedule an appointment at WC Online and then submit your paper to the week's Canvas box. We also have other webinars. You can see all our webinar recordings on our website. You can click on there. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel. And like I said, if you missed the first two parts of this series, you can go back and watch those. And there's a lot of other really helpful webinars as well. We have an APA course paper template, which is lovely. You can download that and not worry about the structure of your assignments because it's all laid out for you. That way you can just think about the content you're going to write. We have a YouTube channel, like I said, and we also have our own blog, the OWC blog. So more inspiration there for you about your academic writing and knowing you are not alone, and all kinds of helpful tips. You can contact us at the Online Writing Center at acu.edu. You can schedule an appointment on that link, and you can visit the Online Writing Center website where our resources are. So I hope this has been helpful for you and that you were inspired to continue on with your writing journey. And please don't hesitate to reach out to us at any time. All right, you all have a great rest of your day.